guys, there's a lot of people out there who are complaining about Sheduer Sanders getting prank called during the draft. Yet they forget that Cooper DeJean also got prank called during the draft last year. I just figured I'd start this video out with that because there's obviously a lot of narratives out there on why it is that Sheduer Sanders slipped and fell as far as he did, eventually getting drafted in the 5th round by the Browns, who also drafted a quarterback before Sheduer. But there's a lot of narratives out there, a lot of bad narratives, and I'm not going to be able to get to every single one of them. So trust me when I say that the description box of this video right here is going to be full of very, very bad takes. However, I think that the highlight of the night, as you guys will see over the course of this montage, was Mel Kiper completely losing his mind.
Of the New Orleans Saints. How you doing? This is Mickey Loomis here, GM of the Saints.
How you doing?
Good, how are you, man?
Good, been waiting on you.
Yeah, we have. It's been a long wait, man.
In terms of evaluating quarterback, that's proof. There's proof of that.
How many
times? They say we know exactly what we're talking about with quarterbacks. They don't.
Because I tracked it down, I knew it was, and I called the head coach, and we had a candid conversation. Because we
really good for you.
We were really cool, and he said, "Prime, that never happened." He said, "Matter of fact, it was a great interview. We all walked out of there saying, dang, this kid got it." I said, "Yeah, but this guy on your staff lied and said it did. So you need to check him." And he did.
And in a stunning twist, the guy who prank called Sheduer turned out to be the son of Falcons defensive coordinator, Falcons defensive coach, and former Jets head coach, Jeff Ulbrich. Yeah. Talk about wild.
So we've got narratives out there that the NFL colluded. That also, to go on top of that, we've also got narratives out there that, oh yeah, that right there is right. The racism narrative, which of course got kicked around a lot before the draft, because if you guys remember correctly, I did do a video on Sheduer Sanders and why it was that he was falling down the draft board a few weeks before the draft. And of course, there was also Ryan Clark, who also had some very interesting things to say during the draft about Sheduer Sanders' situation. However, it's the one thing that he said that, quite frankly, I think people remember the most. So let's go ahead and start there. Let's go back in time.
To play at the moment the same way a coach or an offense coordinator would, because that's what he's going to have to do. And I've had conversations with Sheduer Sanders, and he can do that. We all know that it's not just about him being Deion Sanders' son. It's about the bravado he carries. It's about the fact that he looks a certain way. It is about the fact that the color of his skin sometimes at that position can be questioned.
Oh, there was a lot of that over the course this weekend, including a bit from a former Democratic Party Congressman, Jamaal Bowman, who lost his primary last election. I'm not going to be talking that much about that. I'm not going to be talking that much about that at all, because that right there was to be expected over the past few years. By the way, that narrative dies the minute the first guy is selected in the draft as Cam Ward, a black guy with dreadlocks. So just go ahead and miss me with that. Also, to go on top of that, Jalen Milroe was taken before Sheduer. So yeah, just go ahead and stop with that. There are people out there who are wondering why it is the Giants did not take Sheduer Sanders. And of course, it came out during the draft that Sheduer did not mesh very, very well with Giants head coach Brian Daboll. There was even a heated exchange at some point in time, but still at the same time, though, there is a lot to discuss over the course of this video, and I'm not going to be able to get to every single narrative. However, I am going to get to the ones that I think are the most important for the purposes of this video. Now, gang, before we fully dig into this topic, if you are subscribed to the channel, make sure the notifications bells are on, so that way you guys are notified when the content is released. Also, if you are not subscribed to the channel and you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. It's the best way to support this channel for free. If you guys can, please also hit the thumbs up button, so that way this video will go up higher in the algorithm and get out to a much, much larger audience. And the last thing is that there's going to be an updates video that's going to be coming out tomorrow right around 5 or 6 o'clock. Just some updates on the transition into the new content. Make sure you guys, if you are subscribed, still stick around too as well. You guys will probably like what it is that I'm going to be posting here soon. It is still very, very much commentary, but we're just kind of going to be doing it a little bit differently. So it's still, though, make sure you guys please sub, hit the like button, all that type of stuff there, and let us go ahead and get into this. Now, before I talk about any type of crazy racism narratives or collusion, because Stephen A. Smith has released a video saying that this was collusion, I want to take care of Mel Kiper first. So during the draft, Mel Kiper was losing his mind. He was going absolutely insane, absolutely crazy, as you guys will see here.
I said it when Tom Brady was taken. The offensive line's got to protect him. He's got to have that fortress in front of him, as Brady did, allowed him to have that success. You think about what he had at Colorado. He dealt with adversity. He dealt with a muddy pocket. He done it with everything NFL conditions lead you to have to deal with once you get to the pro level. Then you think about the character. I think this is the misperception. I think the fact of the matter is Deion was a great teammate. Deion practiced hard. They loved him in the NFL. They loved him with the Atlanta Braves in Major League Baseball. Sheduer, he will galvanize. He'll be that kind of guy. Has been clueless for 50 years when it comes to evaluating quarterback. Clueless. All that, no idea what they're doing in terms of evaluating quarterback. That's proof. There's proof of that.
How many
they say we know exactly what we're talking about with quarterback? They don't.
During all that, there people reminded us of the draft. I think it was 1994 or 1995 when I think it was the Indianapolis Colts general manager laid this on the world.
Your response?
Well, you know, we got a guy up there. Who in the hell is Mel Kiper in a way? I mean, here's a guy that criticizes everybody, whoever they take. He's got the answers to who you should take and who you shouldn't take. In my knowledge of him, he's never ever put on a jockstrap. He's never been a...
The man's never been credible is all I'm going to say. But here's what I got a problem with. You see, if you saw the draft and you listened on ESPN, then you would probably notice that Mel was extremely, extremely pro Sheduer. He also said something there about Deion Sanders being a great teammate, all that type of stuff there. However, I don't think he did his due diligence with that. Deion Sanders, if you guys know, was a two-sport athlete. And by the way, I say this with love with Deion because I actually like Deion Sanders. I'm not here to criticize him, even though I'm going to criticize him over the course of this video. Yes. If you want to make fun of how the hell I worded that just now, I really and truly don't care. Have some fun with it. But still, though, the point is this right here. I don't think Mel Kiper did his due diligence on Deion. You see, Deion, when he was with the Atlanta Braves, he was traded in 1994 because he was becoming a clubhouse problem. Deion was a two-sport athlete, played for the Atlanta Falcons, and he also played for the Atlanta Braves. By the way, people get this thing confused where they think that Deion started his career with the Braves. No, Deion actually made his Major League debut with the New York Yankees, I think back in 1989. He ended up in Atlanta later on. There was a very famous moment in 1992 where Deion figured he would play a football game and a baseball game in the same exact day. I want to say it was Game 3 or it may have been Game 4 of the NLCS. And it led to an infamous, which I may do a video on at a later date, it led to an infamous moment where Tim McCarver criticized him, basically saying he was selfish. Tim McCarver would go down to the Atlanta Braves locker room to interview the team after they had won Game 7 of the NLCS on their way back to their second World Series in a row, and it would lead to a moment where Deion would throw Gatorade at Tim McCarver. It was that type of stuff there that the Atlanta Braves organization were scared of, and they eventually traded him. They traded him in 1994 during the strike-shortened season when Deion had a blow-up during a game where he got ejected, and he did what? He threw a Gatorade jug out there onto the field. The Braves traded him the very, very next day to the Cincinnati Reds for, I think it was either Mike Kelly or it was Roberto. I think it was Roberto Kelly and one more player. And Deion would eventually get traded again to the San Francisco Giants, where he would ultimately play for the San Francisco 49ers later on that year, win a Super Bowl, and then ultimately he would sign with Dallas. By the way, what I just said right there is going to come up over the course of this video, so just kind of think of that right there as a bit of a primer for the next bit of discussion that we're going to be having. But getting back to why it was that Sheduer Sanders dropped, well, let us go ahead and get to that. So let's go ahead and dive into that. So a lot of people are looking at the teams that could have drafted him. And of course, I mentioned the Giants earlier. Sheduer did not interview very well. I did a video on this a while back where he had refused to throw in front of scouts. You guys are probably seeing Tom Pellasaro right here in the B-roll footage. He will come up a little bit later on because he actually brought that back up. He actually discussed that. By the way, Tom Pellasaro seems to be somewhat of the MVP this draft as far as coverage or reporters are concerned. There normally is one every single draft, but for the moment in time being, I want to pivot back to one who's actually been quite infamous over the past few years in Adam Schefter. Now, what does this have to do with the situation? Well, let me go ahead and tell you right now that Schefter has this habit of collecting quotes from other people, scouts, general managers, personnel, and he typically tends to put that into one giant statement, as you guys will see right here. I'm going to let it play all the way through, roughly 1 minute and 26 seconds. It came from Jason Whitlock, but it's the actual quote, so let's go ahead and see it.
Yeah, let me read the Adam Schefter quote. This is the first thing I found interesting. This is in a story Adam Schefter had about Deion and Sheduer. Here's a point that some personnel people in the league made about Sheduer Sanders. He is the rare player whose NFL experience will be a reversal of his college experience. He has played for his father, Deion Sanders, throughout college. He didn't have the chance to be on his own. Now at the NFL level, he will be without his father's presence in football for the first time, and he will have to adapt to his new life the way some players do when they go from high school to college. This, in the eyes of some, will be an opportunity for Sanders to grow, continue to learn, and take his game to an even higher level. And then there's this. Short of Pittsburgh's Mike Tomlin, any other coach who drafts Sanders better be comfortable with his standing within the organization. Because if that team struggles and the fan base is calling for a coaching change, speculation will start to swirl about Sanders' father taking over. Though Deion recently finalized a 5-year, $54 million contract extension, his buyout is not overly restrictive. It starts at $12 million if he leaves before December 31st, 2025, then drops to $10 million if he leaves in 2026, $6 million in 27, $4 million, 28, blah, blah, blah. So you could
Jason and Steve Kim would further go on and talk about Sheduer Sanders' performance as far as his on-field performance is concerned. And the person who basically had the most rational takes, believe it or not, during this entire process was actually Swagoo. And Dan Orlovsky got a lot of heat, but Dan Orlovsky was telling the truth. There are multiple compilations of Sheduer Sanders taking sacks, okay, roughly 15 minutes. I'll link a couple in the description box. But the thing is this right here. It wasn't just what Jason was saying. It was also the on-field play. That's part of the reason why it is I'm going to be linking that full video in the description box for you guys to listen. Like I said, the description box is going to be pretty daggone full for this video. But getting back to what the hell was said right there. Imagine that you are a head coach. Imagine that you are a head coach that's been a coach for roughly a year or two, and maybe you got a year or two left on your contract, and you take Sheduer Sanders, who, by the way, has never played for anybody outside the realm of his father. Imagine you take him, and imagine you're the general manager, who, by the way, could very, very well get fired or lose his job with the head coach. Imagine if things are not going right in year one or year two, as they oftentimes tend to do with a rookie quarterback. Imagine suddenly getting fired and replaced with Deion Sanders. So obviously paranoia would be a reason. But the thing is this right here. That paranoia is actually quite warranted. There's also other red flags that were quite frankly pissing people off about Sheduer. Like, for example, this whole montage I'm about to play for you guys is roughly a minute long where you see bad sportsmanship and you also see Sheduer throw his offensive line under the bus.
Times did Raul get touched?
You said what?
How many times did Raul get touched? There was able, like, of course, whenever you're able to run the ball consistently and whenever you're able to, then that opens up the pass, you know? But it's just like you got to understand, like, what your team good at. So it's like, why would we keep running the ball if, okay, we out there and we get in a situation where it's a must get and we don't get it. Over and over and over, and I've done it over and over and over, so it should be no question why an NFL franchise should pick me. You think I'm worried about what critics say or what people got to say? You know who my dad is? They hated on him too. So it's like, it's almost normal. Without people hating, it's not normal for us.
One of those was just a guy who works at the stadium on the sideline just collecting the football and Sheduer wanted to fight. The other guy, I know I'm not leaving some context in. Apparently there was some trash talk there. But, dude, if you're going to be the face of the franchise, you're going to need to be a football player and not a rapper.
Bro, let's make a song. Let's drop one, Richie. I play football. Here we go.
Football.
I play football. You ain't got no hobbies outside of that? I play football. That's the only thing I want people to know me as, football players. When they search up Cam Ward, we say American football.
And you wonder why Cam Ward was taken number 1 overall. And also other things too, like, for example, the great big giant chain, his personality. Dude, if you are going to be picked by a team first overall or picked in the first round, you are going to be the face of the franchise. They're looking for you to potentially be the face, especially at the quarterback position. Did you think that maybe 32 other teams, 32 other general managers said, nah, I don't want that mess in my damn locker room. This guy right could be a problem. And you also have to worry about the Deion Sanders factor, which, of course, I did briefly talk about earlier. Look, Deion Sanders was a great athlete, great player, okay? Like I said before, I like Deion. But everybody who's dealt with Deion or dealt with Deion in the 90s or is dealing with him today, they know that this player could, in fact, be drama. I mean, go back to this clip right here that pretty much shows you exactly how bad this humiliation ritual was for Sheduer. And people, of course, had to bring up this old tweet right here where he basically lambasted the Cleveland Browns organization. I mean, this right here wasn't just humble pie. This right here was almost a humiliation ritual. Now, there is one more thing that I will say towards the end of the video, and that right there is exactly what's probably going to happen as a result of all this, because the truth be told is it actually gets a lot worse than what you saw on draft night. But let me get back on track. On to Stephen A. Smith. So Stephen A. Smith, he said something actually quite intelligent right before the draft. Let's watch.
He showed up at the scouting combine. He doesn't work out. Oh, the meetings, it was the arrogance and all of this other stuff. I'm saying forget all of that. I believe that the biggest issue in all of this was primetime Deion Sanders and the thought of having to deal with him. I just read.
Of course. You basically reaffirmed everything the general manager said, or the anonymous quote, which, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, that wasn't a general manager who said that. That was multiple quotes from multiple NFL personnel. All right. Do you guys remember draft night 2021 where Adam Schefter came out there? And he also did in 2020 where he was talking about the Packers wanted to trade Aaron Rodgers. And then like a week later, after everybody found out every single one of his takes were bunk, he went on Dan Patrick and basically told him that it was a compilation of other stories. That right there is what the hell this was. It was a compilation of what 32 separate general managers had said. That right there is what this was. He just took it and rolled it up into one story. That right there is the truth about Adam Schefter. All right. But back to Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith, and I'm not going to play the video because it's about 30 minutes long, he goes on to say that this was collusion on the level of Kaepernick. God, do we need to talk about Kaepernick again? Colin Kaepernick was already beginning to decline in San Francisco, and then he pulled the kneeling stunt, and then they said, you know, we just ain't got time for this, and they let him go. And they don't want him to come back because, quite frankly, they know the guy sucks. I don't think I need to bring up the audition, the fake audition. I mean, I've done several Kaepernick videos. I don't think we need to go right back down that rabbit hole, but no, this right was not collusion. They didn't take him because he refused to throw at the combine. They didn't take him because of his personality. They didn't take him because he's more interested in being a rapper. They didn't take him because they didn't want to deal with the possibility of Deion Sanders horse crap. Do you guys remember when the Lakers drafted, Lonzo Ball, and you had his father, you know? What was that guy's name? What was that asshole's name? I remember the brothers. It was Lonzo, LiAngelo, LaMelo. Oh, wait, that's right. LeVar Ball, the guy who was saying that he could beat Michael Jordan in a one-on-one. They didn't want the drama. They didn't want the horse crap. Which is, by the way, what this kid brought. And not to mention the fact that he really isn't that great. I mean, honestly, to tell you the truth, I mean, nobody wanted it. That right there is the real reason why it is they didn't take him, number one. So if anybody did this to him, you could argue that Sheduer did it to himself. It's a humiliation ritual, and it's quite frankly something that could very, very well break Sheduer. But do I need to remind everybody exactly how bad it was? Well, like I said before, there was an MVP this draft, and his name was Tom Pellasaro. Tom Pellasaro kind of primed everybody for the fact that Sheduer was going to drop. This segment is roughly 1 minute and 52 seconds. I'm not going to interrupt. There may be a header placed over it because NFL Network has this tendency to lay copyright claims, so don't be surprised if I play it as is while I'm recording this video with no header over it, but then I've got to come right back in and I got to re-edit it because of a copyright claim. But Tom Pellasaro nailed it. Let me just watch.
You think you got a starter, you take him in round 1. If you're drafting somebody to be your backup, you don't want to do that until day 3. I spoke last night with one general manager who is considering taking Sheduer Sanders today. He pointed back all the way to March 2024 and something that Sheduer's father, Deion Sanders, said on a podcast talking about both Sheduer and Travis Hunter, saying that if they are drafted by a team that they don't want to go to, he's going to step in and pull an Eli, meaning force those players to not actually go to that team and try to get them traded. Throughout the pre-draft process, Sheduer Sanders very much proceeded as if he was dictating to clubs where he was going to go rather than how the draft works, which is the other way around. And there were a bunch of opportunities missed at the various checkpoints through that pre-draft process. Go all the way back to All-Star season. Instead of going to the Senior Bowl, he went to the East-West Shrine Bowl in his backyard in Dallas. Despite an NFL memo saying if you go to these All-Star games, you have to practice, Sheduer chose not to. At the Combine, it is now well documented some of his formal interviews did not go well. One assistant coach told me in all his years it was the worst formal interview he'd ever been through. People said that Sheduer was trying to dictate how he wanted things to go and made them feel small. Even at the Pro Day, the entire Big 12 had an event in Dallas. Sheduer was there, but did not work out. He had a showcase instead in Colorado. All of which is to say, for a player who had a variety of questions both about the talent level, how he would fit into an NFL system, how he would adjust from his play style in college, but also about the potential culture shock of for the first time playing for someone who is not his father. There were opportunities that Sheduer Sanders could have taken there. He seemed to feel as if he was in an elite category where he could choose the few teams he wanted to go to. Now some of those very same teams that might be considering taking Sheduer today didn't get those opportunities to answer their questions.
Everything that Tom Pellasaro said, everything that he said right then and there, that right there is what the hell happened. That right there is why Sheduer Sanders was drafted in the 5th round. Not the 1st, not the 2nd, not the 3rd, not the 4th. He was drafted in the 5th round. And by the way, the Browns drafted another quarterback before him. Let that sink in. Let that there sink in. That right there is what the hell happened this draft. So no, he did not get lowballed. He did not get screwed over. He fell. That is what the hell happened. Now, whether this kid wants to prove everybody wrong and whatnot, that right there is great, and I hope to God he does. However, guys, I'm a little bit skeptical. So let me go ahead and close this video out on what more than likely will happen. So Joe Flacco is right now the, I guess you could say he's the starter of the Browns right now, starting quarterback. Signed a 1-year deal. He played there 2 years ago. He's kind of familiar with Kevin Stefanski's system. And, of course, you know, he's got a Super Bowl from his time in Baltimore, you know, and he's probably going to be the number one guy while Deshaun Watson is recovering. By the way, the Browns are desperate to get the hell away from Deshaun Watson. They basically give this guy $250 million guaranteed, and they got to deal with the massage parlor scandal. They got to deal with all that crap, and the fact that apparently he also re-injured his Achilles. But still, though, the point is this right here. The Browns, they owe a lot of money to Deshaun Watson. They're not going to be able to just trade him. So he's probably going to get dibs at the starting job if he recovers, if he's ready to go come week 9. And not to mention the fact they also traded for Kenny Pickett, who, by the way, just won a Super Bowl as the backup for Philadelphia. And to go on top of that, he does have experience as a starter. So the Browns are looking to go to him in case something happens. Then you got a competition between the guy you drafted in the 4th round and Sheduer. I think that Sheduer Sanders probably ends up on the practice squad. That is more than likely what the hell happens to Sheduer Sanders unless he absolutely and totally impresses, which I personally don't think he will based upon his film. Or worse, he could just flat out get cut. You're fortunate. You're fortunate that the Browns drafted you. All right, you're fortunate. Now, if there's one thing I could say to him is this right here. You're going to have to look yourself in the mirror, and you're going to have to go out of your way to impress in training camp. And it's possible that he could do that. I hope and pray that he does. But this right here was beyond good old-fashioned humble pie. This right here was an outright rejection, and if anything, somewhat of a humiliation ritual. And that right there is all I got on this take right now. Now, guys, this right here is probably going to be the last video that I release on the sports topic, at least for now. You guys know me. I've been trying to spread the takes out, create other channels, try to create my own little network. What I'll probably do is create a sports channel later on down the road. There's going to be a transition into new content where I'm going to be talking about stories and the commentary behind it, the point of what it was, mostly films, mostly games, stuff like that there. So for the time being, right now, we're going to be transitioning into that there. There'll be a greater updates video out on that there tomorrow, but there will also be 2 more videos released this week on Tuesday and Wednesday, one of which is supposed to be released this past weekend, but I want to get a little bit more data before I decided to get that video out there. It's about the woman's role right now. And then also to go on top of that there's also going to be the video that's going to be kind of a double whammy, as in I'm going to post it to Geary She 33, Crusty Old Vet, and here it was my response to Nicholas Irvin's China simping. So make sure you guys stick around for all that there. And of course, I'll even tell you how these videos right here are going to go going in the future and the actual timeline. But that updates video will be out tomorrow to go along with this one here. If you guys can, please hit the like button, subscribe, share, sign off in the comments. I will literally what you guys got to say, and I'll see you guys later.